Okay, the mind's eye. This is one of the episodes of TNG that is there simply to set up later stuff. It also goes some places that are kind of interesting because it has Geordi get turned into a brainwashed Romulan operative against his will, and it's said in the episode that the only reason this was able to be done is because of Geordi's cybernetic implants. Because the brainwashing technique the Romulans used in this is something that requires cybernetics and can't be done on people who don't have any cybernetic implants, and thus would force the Romulans to add cybernetic implants, which, in a crew of people who don't have them, would be a dead giveaway that something out of the ordinary is going on. Now, if you're not going, if you have an operative who isn't known to the crew of the ship, and they don't know whether this person is supposed to have cybernetic implants, that's different. But you can't just use this process on someone who is a non-cyborg and then send him to work with his crewmates who know that he's supposed to be a non-cyborg. That doesn't work. Anyways, so Geordi, yeah, he has a bad time this episode. That is actually an interesting thing with this episode is that while under normal circumstances, Giordi would be one of the player stand-ins. Um, Geordi in this episode gets used more as an NPC than a player stand-in. Now, in a TTRPG, you could have a player act out the part of a um, covert agent, and then have the other players need to figure that out. Which, I mean, there's entire games that are related to that. That's not the way Star Trek Adventures normally works, though. And so I think that making it work within Star Trek Adventures would be better served for uh, having a new character be the operative, or someone who's normally a I suppose, GM controlled character that's not necessarily a new character, but someone that the um, players don't necessarily know all that well. Anyway, so other things that get introduced here. Krios. We don't actually see a single Kriosian in this episode. That hasn't been designed yet. This is the first use of an alien of the week race that actually gets used more than once. The backstory that the later writers make up for them is actually pretty interesting. Not in this episode, so I'm going to ignore that because it's not here. You can look that up too. That is something that's actually worth reading. Now, noteworthy here is that the entire Kriosian solar system is in Klingon territory, and the Klingons have subjugated them, and this is a race that has been forced to live as Klingon subjects for quite some time. We don't know exactly how long. Now, the interesting thing here, though, is that the Federation just like, oh, well, we can't, actually encourage a revolt. Because, like, one thing that's noteworthy here is that Bug actually does seem to consider it reasonable that the Federation would want the Kriosians to no longer be Klingon subjects. That is actually something that the Klingons find to be highly believable. And one of the things about this episode that makes the core plot something that is actually a real plot is that the Federation doesn't exactly encourage the Klingons to have enslaved subject races. They do, but to remove those is something that they can't exactly do without um, revoking the Treaty of Alliance, which the Federation doesn't want to do. Yeah, that's a major part of this, and something that doesn't really get fully explained uh, in this episode, but it gets brought up a lot in later episodes. A lot. And we do know for certain, however, is that the Treaty of Alliance, which has been in effect for all of TNG, was okay. People had to do some serious analysis work to figure uh, out the date when this was signed because they don't ever tell us in an episode. No one knows why. Like, we have an official signing date for the Kittimer Accords, but the Treaty of Alliance is a later edition. It's not the same thing. And some episodes seem to conflate the two as if they're part of the same thing, which in reality does have some merit because, you know, the Kittimer Accords are more of a ceasefire arrangement. It's like we are going to formally end aggression between our two civilizations. The Treaty of Alliance goes beyond that. See, the Kittimer Accords is basically we're no longer at war with each other, but it doesn't allow the two races to mingle. Or I guess political entities in this case would be a better way of putting it, not races. Anyway, so the ceasefire arrangement basically just says we're going to stay in our space as long as you stay in yours. The Treaty of Alliance allows for large scale commerce. However, there are certain things that you have to remember to do. And one of those is seemingly that the Federation has to allow the Klingons to continue to have enslaved subservient races. And that is part of the thing with the Kriosians, is that's what's up with the Kriosians. And the main plot of this episode is that the Kriosians, as an enslaved servant race, actually do have an active rebellion setup going on that was funded, as it turns out, by the Romulans. However, the main focus of this episode is for the crew of the Enterprise to investigate what's going on and figure out the truth of the matter. Because, you know, the Federation's like, we didn't have anything to do with that. It can't possibly be us. And the Klingons have what appear to be Federation issue disruptor or phaser rifles that were confiscated from presumably dead Kriosian rebels. I mean, these are the Klingons we're talking about here. Despite being the kinder, gentler TNG Klingons. Oh, you know what? Honestly, kinder, gentler TNG Klingons is really not true. They're just not at war with the Federation. In many ways, they're actually more barbaric than in TOS. They really are. TOS, they had, shall we say, more thoughtful barbarism. In TNG era, they're just like full Mad Max psychos in some episodes. And the Treaty of Alliance is pretty much the only reason why the Federation and Klingon Empire have a positive relationship. But again, like I said, the whole point of this episode is that the Romulans are trying to sabotage the Treaty of Alliance and trigger a new war between the Klingon Empire and the Federation because if they do this, it will allow them to improve Romulan positions. And thus, it's a matter of the Romulans doing Romulan things for Romulan reasons and hopefully getting stuff out of it. Now, one thing that is noteworthy here is that this episode goes much farther at establishing the location of Krios than the later episodes do. Um, oh yeah, this star chart. They actually kind of that's the wrong. It's a generic chunk star. Da, 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 da. Seriously, I know that there's one of these that actually has the a- actual star chart. Oh, come on. No, oh yeah, this is something that's interesting. Is that this is a Klingon city built on Cryos because of part of their thing of having them as a subservient race. They have Klingons that are acting as slave masters. So they have this Klingon city on Cryos so that they can, keep close watch on them. And that's actually a major plot point is that the um, crew of the Enterprise actually goes to this Klingon city that is built on Cryos as part of the investigation. Now, later episodes do other things with the Kriosians because, like, other than this whole like uprising plot, there really isn't a whole lot of reason in TNG era for the Kriosians to actually do much of anything on the galactic stage. And, you know, as long as they're not doing an uprising, the Kriosians apparently actually do have some level of autonomy and the ability to, as long as they're doing what the Klingons tell them to, they're allowed to do other things in addition to that. Which includes apparently having some sort of a war with Vault Minor because the Klingons subjugated both of them, but the Kriosians and the Vaultees didn't actually ever stop being at war with each other. And the Klingons are apparently fine with having the Kriosians and the Vaultees fight each other. Yeah, both Krios and Vault have been, or okay, Krios and Vault are basically, well, Vault is actually the original homeworld. Krios is where a separation happened and part of the population moved to a different planet. Krios and Vault used to have their own like interstellar empire thing until it got subjugated by the Klingon Empire. Which that is a story that would be worth telling. Although, that's actually something that was introduced as a plot point in The Perfect Mate, not this episode. Anyways, so going back to this, the big part of this episode is the investigation stuff. The phaser rifles taken from a regular stronghold is physically identical to a Federation rifle in most regards. They go over all of the stuff, like all of the control circuitry looks the same as a Federation rifle. However, there are a few minor differences, things that you have to pay very close attention to notice. The discharge crystal in the phaser. has a design that's just slightly better than what the Federation would use in a standard issue rifle. Okay, odd, but nothing particularly out of the ordinary. However, again, though, this is one of those things that Starfleet is really big into the whole idea of mass-produced identical hardware. So having a phaser rifle with a better discharge crystal than what it's supposed to have is an indication that it's not actually a standard issue Federation rifle, but it doesn't tell you who. But here's the other part. The weapon had been charged with a power source calibrated in the terahertz range, which is something the Federation would never do. And as data points out, there's 327 known species that use that. And LaForge is like, yeah. But how many of those want to cause the Federation, the Klingon Empire, to break their peace treaty? Oh, yeah, it's the Romulans. This happens at the midpoint of the episode. Okay. Like the whole thing is like, oh, the Romulans are behind this. Is the middle point of the plot where they figure out that, well, they figure out that Romulans are involved, but they have to figure out who the Romulan agents are, and that hasn't happened yet. That's actually the second part of the episode, and something that gets really interesting. Also, Va actually gets upset about this. And that's kind of interesting. It's like, see this here thing with the whole like weapons crate thing is LaForge as it because the whole like brainwashed Romulan agent thing here. I Bach detects that the Enterprise did in fact beam down a crate of weapons, and the weapons crate is beamed to some place where it's going to get uh, picked up by the Klingons and not actually end up in the hands of the Kriosians because of the fact that as a brainwashed Romulan agent, Geordi's trying to get caught. See, the whole point of this is to make the crew of the Enterprise look guilty. They know that uh, okay, the evidence that the Romulans are involved at this point is actually kind of circumstantial. Okay, the phaser rifle was charged using something that is not Federation technology. However, one can argue that this could be something that was done to it after it left the um, armory that the Federation built it in. Because, you discharge the rifle and then you have to recharge the rifle. Oh, so maybe these guys recharged the rifle using a different power source than what the Federation originally charged it with. Maybe, possibly. You know. And that is actually a good point, honestly. So again, it's like the Klingons aren't going to be just like, oh, it's the Romulans. Okay, case closed. No, you have to actually find the Romulan agent. See, overall, having a story involving the Kriosians is actually a good idea. As a recurring minor race, go for it. But I wouldn't go with exactly this particular plot. But the whole like investigation thing with them is a good idea. Oh, hey, look, Lieutenant Costa. How many episodes did this guy show up in? Not many. Okay, then. Uh, oh well. Anyway, again, one of those like people who shows up as an assistant to the main cast. That's actually an interesting point, though, is that the role that Geordi takes in this story, you could actually put that role on a minor character that's someone that no one on the crew actually knows, simply because of the fact that, well, you're not going to pay as much attention to where all of the minor characters are. Anyway, though, so the whole thing of the creative weapons getting beamed down makes the Klingons decide to arrest, sort of, the Enterprise and be like, okay, if you try to leave, we're going to kill you. So they're going to continue the investigation and figure it out. Oh yeah. Also, we find out that it's actually the Klingon ambassador Kel who is the Romulan agent. Thing is, in universe, the only one who knows this is Sela and LaForge, because LaForge is actually getting the uh, uh, instructions from him. It's like Kel is actually the one who is uh, making LaForge do things against his will. Sela just gave Kel the ability to do that because she's not able to be there in person. Now, the story of how and why Kel is a Romulan agent is a very good one. If you were to do this as a Star Trek Adventures module, that would be something to look into. Like, it's like if you do a follow up with this, it's like how and why did Kel become a Romulan agent? We don't know. Now, this is something that's yeah, kind of interesting here, though, is that another thing that's interesting here is that Vach is not actually here because it's his normal thing. Kel actually wants Vach to be here because of the fact that he wants Vach to witness the fabricated evidence when he forces LaForge to do something against his will. And Kel actually wants LaForge to kill Vach, which is the climax of the episode. Is that we have the Enterprise crew prevent Geordi from killing Vach. If Kel had been able to force Geordi to kill Vach, that might have actually started a new war between the Federation and the Klingons, with the Klingon High Council writing off the entire investigation and all of the evidence presented by Picard and his crew as being misdirection in order to hide the Federation's involvement until they did lured Bach into a position where they could just murder him and then leave. Yeah. Well, the only real proof they actually come up with is that the people are like, okay, Kel, will you consent to be searched to see if you have an E-band transmitter on your person? And Kel publicly tells everyone no, that he is not willing to have people check to make sure he's actually uh, t- uh, doing what he claims that he's been doing. At which point, that's a giant red flag, and the Klingon's like, alrighty then, well, I guess this mystery's solved. Because again, in order to get this whole thing resolved, they had to basically get Kel to admit to being duplicitous. They don't actually get Kel to admit to being a Romulan agent. They don't get Kel to explain why he's doing anything other than seemingly greed. There is actually a moment in this episode where Kel kind of sort of talks about what motivates him in general, which would seemingly be greed. Oh yeah, Jay. Again, one of the minor characters that is a recurring uh minor one, but oh hey, this is interesting. Jay when not in uniform. That's different. Because this is like an off-duty thing where if someone is reciting poetry and Jay is like, was it really worth coming for this? Oh yeah. Also, Jay was one of the people that went to the Janolan Dyson sphere. Ooh. No, wait, no. This is the Tyrian particle fountain. Ugh. What are the, she might actually be the one to do the Janolan Dyson sphere though. Relics. Oh, she is actually in that episode. Okay then. Whatever. Not important. Again, minor recurring characters are a great thing to have because it gives you as a GM something to do later. You can be like, "Oh, hey, it was this guy," and not need to introduce a new character because you did that already. Now, this is interesting here because of the fact that oh, this particular one is too small to read. That is unfortunate. Oh yeah, I was trying to figure out where exactly. Anyway, I close that. Oh yeah. Dum 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 dum. Um, hmm. Again, it's like the we have a vague idea that he was doing this because he's greedy, but we don't really have much of any explanation for what's going on. Even though he actually gets unmasked at the end of the episode, he still doesn't tell anyone what he's doing or why. And that that is part of the episode that gets interesting. And something that I would personally find to be worthwhile as like a follow up thing is because looking to figure out what Kel was actually had as his big long range goal. That would be really interesting. Okay, think. Hmm, Vault system. Here's where it was. Yeah. Apparently, it's in the Memphis sector. I think. Yeah, this is blurry and I can't make it out properly. Okay, so mm, 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 I'm not sure. Yeah, looking at this, it's a little too blurry to properly make things out. I think this says no. That appears to say Rura Penthe. I'm not sure. So it says the wiki claims it's on this map, but I can't read the names on the map. So whatever. Anyways, um, the noteworthy part here though is that it is actually relatively close to the Alpha Quadrant. This is here as the Alpha Quadrant Beta Quadrant line, and we know that the Kriosians have had interactions with the Ferengi and the Cardassians. The Ferengi and the Cardassians both live on this side of the line. So, you know, some level of connection. This is like this here area is relatively close to the line. Anyway, don't need to worry too much. But having Ferengi and Cardassians or other races from that region involved with your version of this story would actually be an interesting plot twist. Because the original story was a very, very singular investigation. It's like, yes, Romulans were the instigating force, but we barely see Romulans in this episode. And that was part of what made the episode interesting is that, you know, you have the Federation trying to uncover the hidden Romulan plot. Well, the Romulan agents that we see in the episode, for the most part, are Geordi, who's being forced to do it against his will, and a Klingon. Yeah, and that's what really really makes the investigation angle so um meaningful. Is that you can't just go like, oh hey, it was the Romulan guy, and point to a Romulan guy in the room because there are no Romulans in the room. No one at Krios was a Romulan. So identifying the culprit requires you to figure out how to prove that one of the people is a Romulan spy without being an actual Romulan. And yeah, that was the big part of the episode. And something that would be, a lot of fun to try in a TTRPG. Investigations. Woo. Alrighty then. See you guys later.